Good morning everyone, welcome to this webinar where today we're going to be looking at what's new for steel in Revit 2021. So my name is Rob Merriman. I have 11 years of experience in the construction industry. I started out as an architectural metalwork and structural steelwork draftsman using advanced steel. I now work for Graitec UK as an application engineer looking at all structures. So we do training, technical support, implementation and customization for structural CAD packages, mainly focused on advanced steel, but with advanced steel being added to the AEC collection and Autodesk working hard on the workflows between advanced steel and Revit. I now look at Revit, AutoCAD, Navisworks, Recap, anything to do with structures and steelwork. So a little bit about Graitec. We are a global company and we are technically driven. We have 550 staff worldwide, 355 of those are technical staff. So we're 30 years old, operating in 11 countries through 48 offices. We are quickly becoming one of the largest Autodesk partners worldwide. Like I said, we are technically driven and we do have our own research and development center in Romania, where we produce our own software such as advanced design and all of the power packs. And we are here to help you guys. We work on hundreds of thousands of projects, over 50,000 support cases. We have a 98% excellent or good feedback. And over all the offices in all the countries, we deliver more than 3,500 training courses per year. So why Graitec? We are one of the only companies that can actually take your project from start to finish and cover all areas. So we've broken that down into create, simulate, fabricate, and manage. So create is using the Autodesk portfolio and enhancing them with the Graitec Power Packs. Simulate is then taking those models and actually checking that they will work in the real world scenario. So using products such as Advanced Design or Advanced Design Connection. Fabricate is then taking those models through to the finished fabricated product and the site delivery. So we have tools such as Armor Plus and Advanced Workshop. Obviously Advanced Steel does fall into that category as well. And then every discipline will produce data. So we have a product called Graitec OpenTree that will look after your work in progress data and will collaborate with all of your common data environments. So if you're working on 5 different projects for 5 different main contractors and they've got 5 different common data environments, Graitec OpenTree can manage all of that for you, so you don't have to deal with 5 different common data environments. OpenTree will deal with that for you. So just a little bit about the content that you can get from Graitec and that you might not be aware of. So all of our previous webinar recordings can be found on what we call our content portals. So we have an AEC content portal and an Advanced Steel content portal and an MFG one if you're interested in MFG. So this slide, this presentation, I've converted to a PDF file which you guys can download from your webinar dialog box. You should see the handout, so the links in there will take you to the content portals. This webinar is being recorded and it should be available on the AEC content portal within 10 days of finishing this webinar. Do you get our Graitec blogs or our Advanced Steel blogs? If not, click on the links in the handout. It will take you to our blog pages and you can subscribe so you don't miss out on any blogs. And we have about a month ago now just finished our 2nd annual digital conference. So we run a 3-day digital conference. This year we did 270 classes. If you are a Graitec customer and you've missed the classes or you couldn't attend all of the ones you wanted, as a Graitec customer, those videos are now available from your Graitec Advantage site. And if you're a Graitec UK supported customer, I have put in brackets there, other countries, just check with your local Graitec office. If you are a Graitec UK supported customer, you should have access to the Revit Power Pack, or if you're an Advanced Steel user watching this webinar, the Advanced Steel Power Pack. If you don't have it installed, or you've not got it running, or you're not sure what features would be best for you, please just let us know and we will let you know. So today's agenda, we are going to be looking at what's new for steel in Revit 2021. So we're going to look at steel object editing enhancements, creating stiffeners on beams and columns, inserting steel elements in section and elevation views, dimension snapping for steel plates, and then just some new, well, the Dynamo package is now included with the out-of-the-box Revit. So steel object editing enhancements. You can now edit the boundary or the pattern for steel plates and contour cuts on beams and plates. You can edit the pattern of bolts, anchors, holes, or shear studs. So in there, for example, in previous versions of Revit, if we'd have put a contour cut on the end of the beam, like we have here, if you wanted to edit it, we would actually have to delete it, and then we would have to go in and remodel that. We can now edit that, and we can edit the plates and the bolts. So we're just gonna, with each one of these, I'm just gonna go into Revit. You should now be seeing my Revit screen. So we're going to start with, that's a good enough view. I'm going to start with this connection here. I'm just going to break this connection because we want to customize it completely. So we will break it. And now if we click the plate, we now have the option in here to edit the boundary. So it's, for those of you who use Revit all the time, it is sort of standard Revit functionality to be able to edit the boundary of things. But we can now do that for the steel elements. So that will do the plate, and then the bolts. You can see in here that now that we've split the connection, we can say the number of bolts we want there to change to 2. Just got to click out of it. You're going to change. You are going to change. It's just been a little bit slow today. So that's what we can do with the plates and the bolts. So if we look at the, let's go to the left view. If we look at the contour on this rafter, we do now have the option in here to edit the boundary. That wasn't there in previous versions. So these contours were added in Revit 2019 with the steel tab. But like I said, if you wanted to edit this, you would actually have to go and delete it. So we can just do something like that. We could do something silly. For any engineers out there, probably be having a heart attack now at the amount of steel I'm taking away from the end of that beam. But we can just edit the contours like any other element inside Revit. So we can edit the boundary of that contour. So next up is the create stiffener command. So in Revit 2021, they have now added a new connection to the system. So we now have a dedicated stiffener connection. So the stiffeners can be inserted at a particular point. So you, the user, can click the point and we will now get stiffeners. And that's just shown within as part of the steel connection package. You don't have to install anything anymore. Revit 2019, the connections are already there. They come with Revit now. So what we need to do is we just need to load the stiffener connection into our particular model. As always, when I'm doing a presentation, my machine seems to be deciding to go on a bit of a go slow. So it will be in the group plates at beams, and you can see now we have the stiffener. So if we add that, what we can do is we can go to add a connection, and we'll see that we've now got the option of a stiffener. So we choose the beam, we choose the point on the beam, so we'll choose that point there. So the beam has gone blue, that says it's processing what I want it to do, and that has now put my stiffener in. Now what you can do with these is we can just copy them like we would do normally, so we can copy from the endpoint there to the endpoint down there. Okay, I've missed my snap point, but that has now put a full stiffener in. Let's just make a quick view of that. So that's put a full stiffener in both sides. We could go and edit the joint if we don't want the stiffeners on both sides. What we can also do with the stiffeners, if we go to section 1, because we're going to come back in here in a minute, we'll put the stiffener connection in. We'll put it in the middle here. Now with the connections with Revit 2021, we now have the option to edit the type. So we can duplicate this, and we'll just call this multiple stiffeners. Because what you can do within the parameters of the stiffener is, rather than copying it 10 times or creating a pattern, you can actually do that within the connection. So if we have a look in here, we can say that actually we want 5 stiffeners at 200 centers. Click OK. And that will put our pattern of 5 in. So we might want to move that from there to there. And then there's our stiffeners in there. So next we're going to look at inserting steel elements in vertical views. So in all previous versions of Revit, users were limited to inserting steel components in either a 3D view or a 2D horizontal view, such as a level or a floor plan. So in 2021, this limitation has been removed. So we can now model steel components in sections and elevations. Gone too far there. So again, if we go back to our Revit model, as we're in section 1, say we want to create some plates in here, a stiffener in here, or even just a tag plate to pick up on something, we can choose the plate command. We'll pick a work plane, this is on grid line C, and then we can just sketch away. So in previous versions, we would have had to do that. We would have had to create a reference plane, then sketch it in the 3D view, but we can now add these elements, the same as the cuts and the contours. We can now add these in a vertical view. So if we want to put another contour on the end of this beam, we can say, right, we're going to cut away. Oh, I don't think I clicked the right face then. We need to be in level of detail medium. That'll let me pick the face. For whatever reason, we need to take that out. We can now do that in the section view. As like I said before, we would have had to do this in the 3D view. So one of the next enhancements for steelwork in Revit is now the ability to snap to the center of plates. So users in the past were limited when we were dimensioning plates. We can now dimension to the midpoint if we're looking at the side, or if we're looking at the front, say, of a stiffener, we can actually dimension to the center line of the stiffener. So you can see in here we can pick up the midpoint of plates for when you're doing your detail work. So again, if we flip back to our Revit model, if we go, so we know I have a connection in here, it's that connection there, I can't see it. The reason you won't be able to see it is you have to be in level of detail medium to see the steel components. So if we go to put a dimension on, you can see now we have that center point there. We have the center point that way, and then on our stiffeners we have, as long as you're in far enough, we have the center point of the stiffeners in there. Now, one of the benefits of these is these are the dimensions are parametric, so if we went here and changed the stiffener centers, the dimensions would update automatically. So if we change that pattern to 300 centers, those dimensions have updated automatically. The last enhancement is for the Dynamo for steel. I'm not a Dynamo expert, so thank you to Autodesk and Thomas for this video. But with Revit 2021, the Dynamo nodes for placing steel connections in Revit are now provided as part of the Revit installation and Dynamo that comes with Revit. So this means that all the functionality in the sample scripts provided by the Autodesk Steel Connections Dynamo package is included automatically. In 2020, you had to go and download that package. So these nodes give you the functionality to drive steel connections based on structural analysis results. So if you are placing connections, you can place them now with these Dynamo nodes that look at the structural analysis results, and you can provide a model with a higher level of detail. As an engineer, you might not provide every connection, but you might provide a typical haunch, a typical base plate, and when that gets passed to the detailers, especially if they're using advanced steel, those connections will transfer through to advanced steel as advanced steel connections. And that actually takes us to the end of today's webinar. Quite short and sweet today. The main overhaul of the steel connections came with the addition of the steel tab in Revit 2019. So it allowed you to model these steel plates, these cuts, the contours, the bolts, the welds, the holes. And Autodesk now are building on top of this solid foundation and enhancing the functions for you guys, the users. So if anyone does have any questions, obviously this session is scheduled to run till 11 o'clock. So if you do have any questions, or you do have any more generic questions about steelwork in Revit, I will be here to answer any questions that you might have. We have done plenty of webinars in the past on the steel tab, on the transfer between Revit and Advanced Steel. I think we're up to probably about 10 or 12 hours worth of webinars on the steel tab and the transfer between Revit and Advanced Steel. So in the content portals, you can watch those webinars on demand. Like I said, I'll keep the session running probably for the next 10 minutes or so. So if you do have any questions, please type them into the question dialog, and then we can run through them. Okay, so Aegis, yes. If you've got so the question is it possible to transfer custom connections created in Advanced Steel to Revit and vice versa? The elements of the custom connections will transfer, but not the connections, not the actual sort of joint boxes themselves, because Revit and Advanced Steel do have sort of different drivers and different mechanisms. So the plates, the bolts, the cuts, the notches will transfer, but it won't recreate the joint box. If you've got a Revit custom connection, it won't recreate the joint box in Advanced Steel. And the same going the other way. And then Paul, I've just started using the steel connections and get a warning. The shape for medium connected contains rounding. So what Autodesk recommend is that you use the shapes that come out of the box. So if you're using Revit 19 or 20, you want to be looking at using the supported shapes that come out of the box. It will go down to things like, if I go to level of detail medium, you see the shape in there is just sharp. So that family, if we go and edit it, we go and have a look at it. So we're going to go probably to the left. You'll see that that will be the sketch for level of detail medium, and that's got the sharp points, and then level of detail fine has got the rounding. So you might have to look at your family and change the shape in there. Okay, well, I can't see any other questions coming through, so thank you very much for joining today's webinar. Like I said, if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you very much.